Guys, welcome back to Barrel Age Faith. It's Kyle King. Apparently, there's a new book out that can cure you of becoming Orthodox. That's right. Recently published by Dr. Peter Kay's publisher, called The Orthodox Eastern Church by Father Adrian. And it's being sort of promoted that this is sort of like the book that's going to stop everybody. This is an early 20th century work. He is, a decent historian, but we'll get into some of the problems of the work and why this might be a problematic recommendation for people who are honestly trying to explore orthodoxy, honestly. And Peter Kay says, you will be quickly cured of this temptation of looking at the greener pastures of orthodoxy. That's one of his quotes. And Joshua Charles, another kind of famous online Roman Catholic, says this: as some are allured by the East under the pretext of problems in the West, Father Adrian's book will provide a direct reminder of inconvenient facts. History is full of inconvenient facts. It's pretty messy, by the way. But to use the book to say, oh, this is going to quickly cure a Roman Catholic or even a Protestant of tempting to become Orthodox, I think we're going to have to sort of respond to some of those things today. And then Eric Ybarra, who I appreciate his perspective on many things. I think he's cordial. I think he wants to see the angle on many things. But he says this: for Catholics curiously gazing to the East, Father Adrian's Orthodox Eastern Church book will be a welcome accompaniment. And of course, his claim is much more sort of subdued and not making lofty claims. In many ways, I think he knows that the book has issues because it's quite outdated with scholarship. I mean, there's still many good things in it, but for the most part, it's kind of outdated, which we're going to see. So I think he's a little bit more reserved compared to Dr. Peter, who says this book will cure you. Okay. Um, and it made me think when I was looking at this, I was just like, oh my goodness. I mean, I have not read this whole book. I read parts of it in the past, and you can find it for free online. I'll link it on there, and so you guys can take a look at it. But it made me think of for a minute, like Father Gabriel Bunge. I'm like, oh, if Father Gabriel had just read this book, he would have been cured of his temptation to become Orthodox. And if you don't know who Father Gabriel is, he uh, he was a student of Pope Benedict XVI. Yeah, he was a Benedictine hermit in the Swiss Alps for decades, and he's also a patristic scholar. Okay, so of course he's read Father Adrian's book, and he's vastly read, and he's written on the fathers. And I think it was around 2013 before the Pope Francis pontificate really even lifts off. Um, he becomes Orthodox, and he wanted to for many years, but he finally made that decision. And so I was just thinking about him, like, oh man, if he just read this book, by Peter Kay's publisher, he just would have been cured. And I bring this up because sometimes you can read people online where it's like, hey, if you just read the fathers, you'll be X, Y, Z, and it's not always that simple. Okay, I mean, you hear people that are like, oh, if you just sit at the feet of the fathers, you'll see that you are to be Roman Catholic. And then there's a lot of quote mining going on out there, and you really need to dive much deeper beyond a list of quotes to get a good grasp of the ecosystem or habitat of the fathers, if you will. And so we always have to be sort of wary when big claims are made like that, and do much deeper dives of investigation. Okay, and here's one thing that Father Adrian said that just kind of made me laugh at the conclusion of this book that will cure you. He says, in reference to orthodoxy, they make so much of their ancient customs and venerable traditions that they are only strangely fossilized, and they satisfy no one. The Protestant thinks of them as corrupt, with their images and relics, investments, and incense, as any papist. But the Catholic thinks their church dead and petrified. Dang, that's some harsh, harsh words coming from Father Adrian, who's going in to look at the Eastern Church with a, you know, unbiased mind, calling the Orthodox Church dead and petrified. Now, personally, I don't get offended when, because I think it was Pope Benedict XVI, when he was Joseph Ratzinger, even called Orthodoxy basically having the whole thing, but petrified, in the sense of like it not being able to like move on from the ancient thing. It's fossilized, if you will. And I always think of this as sort of like a compliment, really, because I mean, when you read Matthew 16, it's like Jesus is petrifying his church, right? He's petrifying it. It's built on the foundation of the 12 apostles, and the gates of hell won't stand up against it. And so you have the book of Hebrews chapter 12, which basically says he's giving us a kingdom that cannot be shaken. In other words, it's petrified, it's stable. You know what you're going to get. With Protestantism, it changes every century or every few decades. It's like a wild rodeo. You never know what you're going to get. And Roman Catholicism, it has kind of this like big like tendency. It's been slowly there, I think, century after century, but it's really picking up right now after the major overhauls of the 1970s. And it's like, look, from pope to pope, there's some big pendulum swings happening, and it'd be interesting to see what Roman Catholicism looks like a century from now in the United States. I mean, with Orthodox, you generally know what you're going to get. You generally know what an Orthodox America is going to look like a century from now. But with Roman Catholicism, you don't even know what kind of liturgy it's going to look like. Um, you don't know what kind of innovative blessings might pop up. There's a number of different issues where it's like it can vastly change pretty quickly. Um, just look at the change that has happened within a couple centuries of the modern era. But anyways, there's a really funny meme of from Spider-Man that somebody made. I should have done a shout out for the person who made it. I'll give them credit in the comments. But, of course, we got Peter Parker who says, "I'm converting to Orthodoxy," and then the objection comes. And actually, what's funny is Father Adrian gives us exact objection in his book. He says, "Orthodoxy, they're stuck in at the seventh council. They don't go beyond that. They're frozen." And so he's responding, "But Peter, Orthodoxy's stuck in the 8th century." Hey, I already told you I'm converting here. You don't have to sell it to me. Uh, Great meme. Memes are funny sometimes. I mean, they just bring up like a home a point that you just can't really do with like a whole book. A meme just sometimes gets it, and sometimes it doesn't get it. But, anyways, that's a direct response to Father Adrian, who literally says that Orthodoxy like fossilized in the 8th century. And it's dead. It's petrified. It's like, well, it's funny. I don't. I think it's an honor to be called petrified. I mean, I think many good things were happening in the 8th century, but really, the Holy Spirit is breathing and guiding the Orthodox Catholic Church from century after century. And so Orthodox don't claim that the church froze in the 8th century, but I mean, this is why great things are commemorated in Orthodoxy. I mean, St. Mark of Ephesus is commemorated, St. Gregory of Palamas, the great victories over heresy in the second millennium are commemorated, not because we're like frozen back in the 8th century. So that's very important to note. And this is what I said in like response to this whole uh, petrified thing, and I just said it to you. But for me, it's like this also represents the barrel aged faith. Okay, like Saint Augustine says, ever ancient, ever new, the faith that's been handed on. And so for me, I always have had this image of orthodoxy that it's yeah. Is it old? Sure. Is it ancient? Yeah. Is it even kind of hidden a little bit, like in the cellars of time? There is a hiddenness. A lot of people in America don't even know about orthodoxy. I bring it up. People have never. There's a ton of people that have never even heard of it yet. But so it does have this like this hiddenness to it. But I think when you tap it open, you're not finding something like stale or expired. You're finding something that's refreshing, robust, full-bodied, and it's got many ancient notes that have been long forgotten. I mean, I had to go to the Orthodox to learn how to fast. I mean, do Catholics fast? Yeah, but they've forgotten what they used to do. And so you can go to Orthodoxy to sort of like remember, man, we used to fast on Fridays and Wednesdays, and even more than that. And not it wasn't optional. Like you can read even popes from the 8th century, Pope Nicholas, 9th century, who literally says that we always keep the fast on Fridays and Wednesdays. And he tells Bulgaria, well, we'll make Wednesday a little optional for you since you are like the newbies in town. We'll get back to Bulgaria in a second when we talk about the Council of Reunion in 879. But anyways, my take is that Orthodoxy is the barrel-aged faith, the good thing. Okay. Father Adrian, also, this is important to note. Father Adrian, I can't go through this whole work in this stream. It would take forever. Um, I would need to work through. We'll do that at some other time. But he makes some big claims in this book that I think modern scholarship has overturned, and he gives you a biased perspective. Where if you're like trying to look at orthodoxy in the Eastern and Greek perspective sympathetically or empathetically, which we should all do, um, then I think uh, he gives you a biased perspective, and so we got to take a look at this. So on Photius and the Eighth Council. So this is moving into the 9th century, okay? I'm not gonna give you a whole rundown on this. That'll have to be a whole 'nother massive stream. That'd be like a 3-hour stream, um, on the 8th Council, uh, conversation. But anyways, this is what he says, and this is just, like, wrong. This is what Father Adrian says. "The legates agreed to all of this." That is the Council of 879, which overturns the council, the decade before that, which excommunicated Photius, Saint Photius. And then the legates of 879, they go back to Rome. Photius sends the acts of his council to the Pope for his confirmation. And this is what Father Adrian says. Instead, the Pope, of course, again excommunicates him. Mic drop. This is promoting the Photius legend, um, which became really popular in the West, but it's not true. And we have a whole book. Let me pull it up here so you guys can see it on the stream here. Okay. This is a Catholic scholar who wrote the book The Photian Schism, and he completely debunks this legend. Photius did not get excommunicated again. Instead, the council gets confirmed by Pope John VIII, and Photius is restored. And Pope John VIII annuls the Council of 869. Okay, this is pretty much the dominant view today. And so what's fascinating is that the Council of 869 is annulled by the Pope. And a few centuries later, canonists, like experts who study canon law in the West, they actually try to reinstate the Council of 869 that the Pope had annulled. And they try to make that basically the Eighth Council. So in Roman Catholic theology, the Council of 869 is the official Eighth Council on paper, but yet it got annulled by the Pope in 879 when they restored Photius, annulled that council, and he accepted the decrees. Now the West didn't like this because in one of the major documents of the 879 council, which restates Photius, and is a council of union between the East and the West, the Greek East, the Latin West. In that council of reunion, they don't like it because it says there's an agreement that there will be no more additions to the creed, and the context of that history is in reference to like the filioque, like we're not gonna add this to the creed, and so the document literally says that it will not be added. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole controversy of the filioque, but the reason why I'm saying this is it was agreed upon that it wouldn't be added, and that this is sort of the template for reunion between the East and the West. Okay, it's very important. So he gets this history, wrong, and it misleads those who don't know much about uh, Eastern church history. And so this book that Peter Kay is putting out is meant for people who are being lured to orthodoxy, tempted, uh, like Edmund and the White Witch or something. It's like, no, that's not orthodoxy. Um, Orthodoxy is the original thing. But anyways, uh, if this book is meant for like beginners or people who are just getting introduced to it, then this is a very misleading episode in his book about the Council of 879 because it's not just misleading, he just gets it wrong. And then he promotes the legend of Photius, second excommunication even further. So that's quite disappointing. Okay. Now, another episode when we get to Florence, Father Adrian, he gives us a very low view of the Byzantines at Florence. This is another big attempt. Once East and West splits again because the Pope did not obey the agreement at the Council of 879, which says that we would not add any more to the creed. He doesn't follow that. He does. And basically, there's a schism. More going on than just that issue, many issues. But he didn't follow the agreement at 879 that Pope John the Eighth signed off on. So you have this schism. Florence is a major attempt to bring it back. Okay. But this is what Father Adrian says about the Greeks at Florence. The Greeks were always turning sulky and saying that they would go back home if they were not treated properly. The ridiculous pride that never forsook the Byzantines made them insist on the most exaggerated deference. Okay. The Latins humored their pride generously. So he paints the Latins as humble and the Greeks or Byzantines, the Orthodox, as very prideful at the Council of Florence. But I mean, I've talked to many Eastern Catholics, scholars who talk about no, the Greeks were mistreated at Florence. They were like, they were not fed well. Some even said maybe not necessarily starvation, but they were not given uh, adequate things that you would need. And so they're like ready to get this over with. They're, Constantinople is about to be taken by the Turks. I mean, they're in this high pressured situation. Okay. But then Father Adrian paints the Greeks as these great, prideful people. And, uh, and he, in many ways, this connects to how he really kind of trashes the view of Saint Mark of Ephesus with just a quick line. He doesn't give a whole in depth take on Saint Mark of Ephesus at Florence, but he basically says this guy is gonna, object to any form of reunion with the Latins, which actually isn't true. Um, when you read, for example, Father Christian Kappas, who is an Eastern Catholic scholar, he's a Catholic scholar. He's done a lot of work, and many others have rehabilitated the image of Saint Mark of Ephesus at the Council of Florence. Uh, I've got it in number 1, or I've got it in, let me show you, this series here, real quick. Primacy in the Church, got a volume here, okay, and the second volume here. These books, one big, essay in there, and you can find lots, by Father Kappas online, which I can link into this, article. I mean, he calls Saint Mark maybe the greatest theologian at the council. And he also says that he, had a love in him for reunion, a desire. And what was in St. Mark's mind? His mind was that it was going to go like the Council of 879, that there was going to be an agreement like at 879 where Photius is restored. It's called the Council of Union on paper. Now, eventually, the East calls it the Eighth Ecumenical Council. As far as I can tell, the West never really called it like an ecumenical council, but there does seem to be this recognition of it somewhat, but then it gets forgotten. I think there's one canon that passes all into Western canon law from 879. Um, anyways, Father Kappas really rehabilitates the image of Saint Mark of Ephesus. Like he wants reunion, and he's already got the template for it. Why? Because when they were East and West was bickering, they brought it back together. Saint Photius, John, Pope John the Eighth. Okay, and if Florence had just repeated that, it's possible that the whole thing could have stuck with the Greeks. But that's not the template. They didn't follow that template, and so it didn't stick. The people rejected it. Saint Mark of Ephesus rejected. Other hierarchs rejected. I'm not giving you a whole lowdown on that. Obviously, many people did sign the agreement, but it wasn't really authentic to the Eastern mind. Um, and I've talked to even Eastern Catholics who would agree with this sort of take. Okay. Now, third point, Father Adrian. Now, this is not in the book, but he has this in his Catholic encyclopedia article that you'll find on like EWTN. I think even Catholic Answers has a lot of Catholic encyclopedia stuff from like the early 1900s. A lot of it's outdated, but he says this about Saint Gregory of Palamas and Hesychism. This is like the Eastern mystical approach to acquiring the Holy Spirit, to prayer. And he calls it obscure speculation, the wildest form of mystic extravagance. As a result, he says, Gregory of Palamas is a saint to them, not to us. He says Latin theology on the whole is too impregnated with the Aristotelian scholastic system to tolerate a theory like, hesychism that opposed its very foundation. And then he lists off some Western guys who tried to promote it a little bit, but the Catholic side's always trying to condemn it. And so he says it never really had a party among the Catholics. Okay. Why do I bring this up? Well, it's like, stop sharing here. I bring this up because, I am passionate about, union among all Christians, but it has to be a union based upon truth and agreement, like the Council of 879, right? Neither side's really trying to water down what they think, but for the most part, there's an agreement that's made. Okay, and it's a good template for how reunion could have happened at Florence, but it's rejected. And so in this book, he's got like opportunities to say how it could have gone, but he doesn't. He's just painting the Latin side as the humble ones. The Greek says the prideful ones. But really, if we're gonna have if there would be a reunion, I mean, it's gonna have to be based upon the Council of 879. Like, that's the model for how the East and the West came back together. Council of a successful council of union. And it's good for people, to be aware of that. There's a lot more that we could say about that. Uncut Press is issuing a whole text, a translated text on the Eighth Council. Should be shipping my way here soon whenever it gets finished, and that it'll be the first text in English we have of the whole Eighth Council, 879, not the one before that. And it's going to be important for people to really dig into this controversy. So I know that there are many. I know many Catholics and Orthodox who want there to be authentic reunion. But again, it has to be a reunion in truth and the original thing, the barrel age faith that was passed on by the apostles, and that's very, very important. Okay, so I had to give a little bit of a response because I just kind of had to smile when I saw Peter Kay's like line there, like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a quick cure, immediate cure for any temptation to become Orthodox. It's like, well, maybe not. All right, guys, thanks for joining the stream. Let me see if we've got any. Let me see if we've got any body on the stream today. Any questions you want to throw my way? I'm not going to promise to answer all of them, but hey, don't forget to subscribe to Barrel Age Faith. Love to have you. Would love to have asking questions. Love for you to subscribe. Hey, and this ministry isn't possible without support. You can find me on Substack, barrelagefaith.com. $5 a month, guys. Only $5 a month. And I mean, I talk to people all the time. I mean, many Protestant inquirers, or even those who were like spiritually, none, they're coming back to faith in Christ. And there are many Protestants who are also like, man, something's off here. The Protestant churches are changing like crazy. There's got to be something more. They discover the fathers, and then they're trying to make a decision between Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. And so I talk to people. I mean, I'm talking to somebody in seminary right now. I'm talking to several people who are Protestants from various backgrounds, and they're trying to make a decision. And I told people this is one big reason why I had to make the journey to Orthodoxy, because over the last several years, I would always have a lot of people coming to me, not as many as now, but I would always have people coming to me asking me why Roman Catholicism and not Orthodoxy. And deep down, I wanted them to become Orthodox, but I just couldn't tell them at that time. Employed by the Catholic Church. There are many factors on why I couldn't become Orthodox yet. Um, but I knew that I had to be honest with people. I think it's best when I'm talking to Protestants, particularly Protestant people in ministry. I think even though Orthodoxy may have some things to like challenge us in a little bit more difficult ways than Roman Catholicism, which can be a little bit easier on us in when it comes to asceticism and even the liturgical life in some ways. Uh, it can be hard for Protestants to go to their first divine liturgy and be like, "Whoa, this is overwhelming." It's awesome. It can be a little overwhelming, and so all this to be said, I do think Protestants are going to be um, much more anchored in what Christ gave us if they become Orthodox. And so that's where I encourage people to go talk to people. Anyways, if you support that, if you want to fund that kind of ministry where we're taking Orthodoxy across the nation, it's popping up everywhere. It's been everywhere for a while, but it needs to sink into the medium and small cities and in the rural places. Um, it used to be that people used to have to drive 5 or 6 hours to go to an Orthodox church. Now most people have to drive an hour or 2, okay? But it would be good to get that down to like a half hour. It makes it easier for people. Anyways, God bless, guys. You guys have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.